again, the bite model, right? You take things that are meant to be liberating, they're meant to help you be a better person, and then you make them a rule in order to control that person. So we offered you liberty, but actually what we're going to do is we're going to take that from you. But
Right,
then
and
to
I
come
love
back,
this that Ellen says the rule change to drink wine of your own making after the extermination order, so it was okay to drink it. Um, Locals used the wine as a method of poisoning members as part of the extermination order.
Unpacking Mormonism and other religious trauma is meant for educational purposes only.
Hello and welcome to Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma. I'm your host today, Sarah Westbrook, joined with my husband. He's very sexy. Oh, there he is. Hello, Mason.
howdy.
Mason Westbrook. So we are actually launching today a little bit later than normal. We have had an insane last couple of weeks, but I think that's kind of the Westbrook norm. So are you ready to get started, Mason? All right, he gives me the thumbs up. So really quickly before we begin, we are very appreciative. We had some donors send us some money by clicking here on the Venmo app. Donations are greatly appreciated because they do help us pay our production team a livable industry standard wage, and that is very, very important to us. And as we move into the Daisy Girl Wellness Farm, we are going to be getting a larger production team and whatnot. So your donations and your generosity help. Although the thing that we love the most is emails expressing your thoughts, opinions, and constructive criticism. We have thoroughly enjoyed engaging with our audience. So thank you so much. And for those of you who joined us, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago and earned some prizes, those will be getting shipped out to you hopefully this week. I had an unexpected event occur. I was driving in the snow and my Toyota Highlander is no more. Gratefully, we're all alive and well, just a little bit banged up, but I'm a little behind on getting those out. So if you were called out for winning some Daisy Girl merchandise, please know that I am sorry that it's late, but it is on its way to you. Alrighty. So our show today is our final wrap-up show for our Temple series. So Mason, what do you think? How do you think we've done on the Temple series? Is there anything you wish we'd covered or didn't cover, or what are your thoughts?
I think we did pretty good. I would be interested to know if others felt the same way, but I think we did pretty good. We wanted to just kind of, we went over some of the history, but mostly we wanted to kind of go over just what happens and then kind of the mental health impact of that. I think we've covered that pretty decently, and I'm hoping that we'll kind of just wrap all of that up and close that out today as we finish up.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, and I'm going to keep looking over here. Our producer has to jet early, so I'm running the behind the scenes. Apparently, so is Mason. So
I'm trying to anyway. Not very good at it.
Yeah. So anyway, we also have heard from our producer Alex, who said that our Temple series is our fastest high listens of any of the shows that we've done. So we're really shout out to our audience for your support. And I agree, Mason. Today's kind of a wrap up. I feel like we did a lot of the history of it. We did a lot of our experiential expertise with it as well. And I've had a lot of fun. I'm also grateful to be wrapping it up. Although I think we didn't do the ceilings, did we?
No, we never did do the ceilings.
Darn it. All right. So you're going to see this live today as the wrap up, and then we'll go in studio to another show later this week to talk about the ceilings, because I think that one's really important for our family. So we're doing our wrap up show a day early, and then we'll do the next one, and we'll be wrapped up. Okay, that just tells me how
unorganized. Yes, we have something to do tomorrow, right?
Right, we are so unorganized. It is just gloriously consistent. for the Westberg family. All right. So today in our show, as we wrap up, I remember, I'm going to go ahead and just jump in with a story because I feel that humans learn best through relatable stories. And I feel that that is just kind of par for the course here, especially since as we're wrapping this up and moving into the next project, we'll also be increasing the new project, Unpacking with Sarah. That is not affiliated with anything religious. We're just going to be talking about trauma and mental health and mental wellness in general. And I'm really excited about that project. So out with the old and with the new. But my story is that so I'm gonna look over here because it's just easier for me. About a little less than a year ago. Hang on, my computer hates me. There it goes.
Sure, it's
It
all the
really
computers.
does. There we go.
Oh,
This is
look
my
at her.
happy place. I
Look at
know.
her.
I know, doesn't she look just so happy? She's so peaceful. So this is me. Obviously I'm not temple worthy in this picture because you can see my shoulders and my armpits. Mason, is that you clapping? What is that sound?
Yeah, that was
Um,
the tick 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 sound, right? Yeah.
yeah, so I'm not temple worthy here apparently because I'm showing my shoulders. I'm also in another picture. I'm out with one of my closest friends. This is my dear sweet friend Steph. Hey Steph, if you're watching, love you so much. But Stephanie and I went on a cruise almost a year ago now. I think it was April that we went, and we were naughty. We drank alcohol. We, ran around in swimsuits. We soaked in the hot tub. We sang karaoke, and it was just the two of us on a cruise. It was a much needed break from our kids. That is why I look so blissfully happy right here, is because there are no kids in the cruise ship's daycare center waiting for me to come pick them up. And we went to the Bahamas, we went to Grand Turk, and we almost sunk actually. Our boat, we got hit by a rip wind from the tornadoes that hit Florida. I think it was last April. Just as we were leaving port, and our boat literally tipped, and even the staff was a little bit frantic. It was quite humorous. But we all lived, we all came home. And on the very last night of that cruise, I had this experience and a thought. So I'm gonna show the picture here of the experience. So here we are. This is the last night of the cruise. And if you were able, I don't know if we can zoom in. I don't think we can zoom in. So get really, really close to your screen and, with your eyeballs, zoom in to this picture. And so what you're seeing here is we've got our cruise director on the stage. They're handing out prizes. We're doing the last night of the cruise celebration. We are going to be porting in Long Beach, California, first thing the following morning. So people were up all night long enjoying their last night of vacation. And he was teaching us a lot of line dances, and everybody was dancing together. And it's really hard to see in this picture, but on this ship, I want to say it was the Jubilee, but I could be wrong on the name of the ship. But there was, balcony, like buttresses all the way up in the center of this Carnival cruise ship. And there were people, there were passengers lined up at the glass barrier, like oh goodness, Mace, what am I wanting to call it? Like the banister, the thing so you don't fall over. That thing.
Yeah.
The railing. There it is, the
The
glass.
railing.
The glass railing. I call that the Abby proof glass, although Abby would still climb it, which is why Abby's never joined us on a cruise before because, squirrel. So
Right.
anyway, but all the way up, and I'm gonna say like 9 stories, 8 stories, 6 stories. Hey, there's my little squirrel. 8 or 9 stories. I don't remember how big. It was a big ass ship for sure. And there were people lined up all the way around, all the way up. And as I just took a moment and watched people. So, I'm a mental health counselor. 80% of communication is nonverbal. And so I've gotten really good at reading people's nonverbal communication in the sense of like I'm not clairvoyant. I definitely do not possess that skill at all. If I tried to be a clairvoyant, that would be a disaster and a half. But anyway, as I remember as I was standing there watching all of these people and looking around, there were some interesting things that I saw. And what I saw was a great deal of joy. a great deal of celebration. I saw young ladies dancing with older men, older women dancing with younger men, people just having a great time, people loving and talking and engaging with complete strangers. And it reminded me, like, this thought came into my head as I was experiencing this very joyous occasion on the very last night of this vacation that I took with my girlfriend. And the thought was, this is what my Mormon upbringing would have identified as the great and spacious building. And so, Mason, as you're pulling out your scriptures there, I'm going to put in our great and spacious building picture. So, if you are familiar at all with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka Mormons, teachings, the great and spacious building is part of the, let's see, it's Lehi's dream. And then Nephi goes out and is like, hey, God, I need help understanding this because my dad couldn't explain it good enough for me and I'm a dumb shit. So I needed it to be explained a second time. Yes, there's a little bit of sass in there. But the idea of the great and spacious building is that the great and spacious building was representative of this world and all of the people living in sin, thinking that they were going to happy, but being wrong about it. Hello, Latter Daily Digest. It's great to see you. I believe that's Jean. Hello, Jean and Maven. Really excited to see that you're going for a walk with us today. So anyway, the great and spacious building is supposed to represent people who think they're happy and having a great time, but they're really not as happy as the people over here in the picture with the shiny fruit, which is representative of the tree of life. That's supposed to be representative of like heaven and happiness. And that all of these people in this great and spacious building are laughing at the people who are doing their best to live a good life, to be with God and Jesus again, to be with their families forever, and that their laughter was, I mean, I remember, Mason, in the pictures that I would have seen growing up, it would have been like people who were drunk, people who were falling all over themselves, people
Well,
in
you
scantily
have to have
clad
alcohol.
humans. Go ahead, Mason. What were you saying?
I mean, you have to have alcohol to have a good time. So yeah, for sure.
Well, Mormons tend to think that non-Mormons can't have fun without alcohol because we have to like numb our brains, or I don't know. Anyway, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, and I don't necessarily want to do that. But I remember being on that cruise ship and saying, this is what Mormonism used to define as the great and spacious building. And in fact, Steph and I met a family as we were in line to get on the boat. So we were in Orlando, Florida. We were in line to get on the boat. And there was another family, a couple people ahead of us or whatever, and they had a bunch of little kids and whatnot. And I was listening to them talk. And of course, if you're Mormon, if those of you have ever been Mormon, like Mason and I have been Mormon, like we wear that I'm a Mormon badge. Well, we don't say that anymore, I guess. But we wear the I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints badge of pride on our shoulder. And so, of course, as we're standing in line, we see this family and they're like, oh, yeah, we're like from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we kind of bumped into this family off and on the cruise ship. And while I was standing here, I'm going to add this one. While I was standing here watching people, so you have to understand it's a cruise ship, okay? So there are absolutely people on that dance floor in bikinis and bathing suits or swimsuit cover-ups, definitely some tank tops, definitely some alcohol, lots of loud music, lots of loud laughter. That was one of the promises we made in the temple, that we wouldn't laugh very loud, I guess. I'm not necessarily certain what that meant. And as this LDS family with their kids were going through, they were rushing them. It was like they were rushing their little kids, like little mama ducks herding their little ducks along the way. And it was like, hurry, hurry, hurry. We don't want to be a part of this. The spirit's not here. And I remember hearing that from, I think it was mom or the dad. I don't even remember, this like the spirit isn't here. So we got to hurry through this. We don't want to be like all these other people. And it struck me as very ironic. And so I want to come back to that thought here in a minute. So Mason, do you have anything you want to add before we jump ahead? By just hang on to that thought.
No, go ahead. I've got a couple ideas, but I think you can just continue and
Okay, so Mason wants me to
collectively.
finish. Yeah, Mason wants me to finish. Hi, Virginia. It's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today. And so the next picture is this one right here. In Mormonism, in my Mormon upbringing, I was taught that this ginormous building was the closest to heaven I could get while on this earth. Um, that it was supposed to be very peaceful, that all of the questions that I had for a higher power could be answered in these walls, and that I was supposed to attend often. In contrast to the cruise ship, most everything that goes on in the temple, unless it's my mom's side of the family welcoming me through the veil after my wedding day, where everybody was shushing us because we Lees, and in my book I called them the Thomases. We are a loud group of human beings. And so anyway, um, everything is in hushed tones, and yet I don't feel like I never had a feeling of great peace or answers. For me, this place was always very boring, very ritualistic, and very, very ornate. And one of the things that struck me as I watched this and sing along, by the way, I mean, we were doing a lot of party theme dances, like we did the YMCA, we did the electric slide, like we were having a good time. And so as I watched this from above and was dancing and singing along, kind of tapping to the beat and enjoying the scene, and I, see this cute little family herding their little children like ducks, hoping to protect them from all the evilness of this joyous occasion. The thought that came to me was, if this is the great and spacious building, I would much rather be here than here any given day of the week. Because while I was here, so for those of you that are just listening, I'm talking about the cruise ship right now. In the cruise ship, I was able to walk around in a bathing suit. I do not have a perfect body. Okay, this body has birthed a few children, and I thoroughly enjoy brownies, and the bikini industry does not get to have power over me. I do not need to have a perfect body, and nobody judged me. Nobody commented on my skin color. About the only comment I had on that entire ship about my body had to do with, "Ooh, honey, you're really white and you're turning red too fast. You need some sunblock." I think that was about the only comment I got about my body, was somebody trying to protect me from the sun eating me alive, which I was very appreciative for. This was a ship full of significant diversity. There were several groups of patrons on that ship that English was not their primary language. We saw people from many different walks of lives. And here we are in the center having a great time connecting over something we have in common. And while I know that there were people on that ship that were probably judging other people, the vast majority of us were there to have fun and just embrace the beauty of exploring the earth and connecting over pop culture and musical awareness. Like, I think my favorite scene, and I'm trying to see if it's in this picture, there was this cute little girl, probably about the same age as my Abigail is now, like probably between 10 and 12 years old, who was trying to teach the grandma how to do the chicken dance. And it was probably the cutest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen that type of joy and fun and happiness and connection at the Mormon temple in all of my life. And I've been Mormon, was Mormon from birth until I was in my mid to late 30s. And so it makes me wonder, is this Salt Lake City temple and the other, I don't even know how many temples we're at now, the great and spacious building, or is it truly heaven on earth? And I'll let you decide. So, Mason, your turn. What do you think?
Well, just a couple thoughts for you. Of course, I know people are thinking, yeah, but that's not my experience, and that's fair, right? Like everybody has a different experience, and some people have felt more peace and love in the temple than they felt anywhere else, and that's fine. I know that's the case for a lot of people, and I think that's great.
You can buy Trauma Bonded, a true story of navigating attachments forged in complex PTSD by me, anywhere books are sold, including Audible.
The world's most exciting podcast, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, New York Times best-selling author and National Radio Hall of Fame inductee, Michael Savage.
I'm Michael Savage, host of the Savage Nation podcast, home of borders, language, and culture. Be here or be nowhere. The Savage Nation podcast.
Catch the Michael Savage podcast on all podcast platforms every Tuesday and every Friday.
One of the things that you mentioned, in order to separate the Tree of Life and the Great and Spacious Building, or the Temple and the Great and Spacious Building, there's a lot of judgment going on. There's separation. There's making other populations or people lesser. There's assumptions about those people. And I don't think that breeds love. I don't think it breeds understanding. I don't think it breeds a desire to be together with what Mormons would call our brothers and sisters. And whereas on the Carnival Cruise, there may have been some judgment. I'm sure there was.
There were people there. There was going to be some judgment.
There's always going to be some judgment, but it was an inward judgment. There's less of the outward judgment of basically what it is one of the things I wrote down is that moral superiority loosens tongues. And so what I feel like happens a lot in Mormonism and other religious cultures is that because we feel like we have the moral high ground, we feel like we can say whatever we think is appropriate. And so there's a lot of judgment going on, whereas in this experience with you, you didn't feel that. Whereas in the temple, you did feel that. And I think that's important to recognize. Yeah. Part of it also, the big piece of the whole judgment thing is that in Mormonism, there's always a dynamic of power. If someone is judging you, either they have power over you, quote unquote, from the church, from the religious system, or they're connected to someone that has power over you, or they can tell someone that has power over you what's going on. Like there's a system of narking almost. And it doesn't...
Wait, when you say narking, do you mean like I'm tattletelling? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, there's like a setup of tattletelling, almost expected kind of a thing. And it's all done... Well, it's not all done. It's often emphasized in the name of, well, we're just trying to help you be better. We're trying to take care of you, but it doesn't often feel that way.
It for me, like, as I watched this mother herd her children through this group of people, warning them that danger was like lurking in the main area of the ship. For me, it was how sad, because those children are not allowed to just watch and see the goodness in humanity and how people across cultures and language barriers and whatnot were able to connect together. Because, I mean, I don't know how many passengers fit on that boat. I'm going to say there were definitely more than, I think, 5,000. I think, I'm going to have to look it up to see just what ship it was, because I don't remember what ship it was, but how many passengers are on there. But we'll just say, even if it's just 2,000 people on that boat from different walks of life, instead of these children being able to see something absolutely beautiful, like, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what language you speak or what color your skin is, you can find joy in celebration and connection through the things that you have in common with each other. And those kids missed that, as did the parents. The whole family missed the beauty of people connecting over pop culture.
Yeah, well, and if I can harken back to the bite model, which is one of the things I went back over today, at least parts of it, the very last number on the bite model. So you're in section 4, emotional control, number 8, which is the last number. The first thing it says is phobia indoctrination. In other words, the creation and indoctrination of fears. And if I could make assumptions, and I don't want to judge this family, but it looks like you're afraid of maybe your kids seeing a bikini. You're afraid of seeing people have fun while they're drinking. You're afraid of seeing alcohol. These kinds of things. Like, instead of creating a healthy understanding of things like dancing, things like drinking, things like having fun, like, you can walk your kids through there and go back to your room and say, hey, can we sit and chat about what we just saw? I just want you guys to know that there's nothing to be afraid of here. But these are the things that we're concerned about. Like, you can have a healthy conversation about it. If you don't want to drink alcohol, there's nothing wrong with that. If you don't want your kids to drink alcohol, there's nothing wrong with that. But I felt like what happened for me, and what I've seen for so many people, is there's just a fear created of those things because they're connected to salvation. The number, or the letter B under this one, is that cults create terrible consequences if you leave. Hell, possession, incurable diseases, accidents, suicide, blah, blah, blah. Your salvation is owned by the organization. And we have certainly seen that as we've gone through the temple series here. We've seen how that is so very much reality. The temple holds your salvation in its symbols, in its tokens, in its admission, in its exclusions. All of that is tied to your salvation. And I think that's really where the danger there is. It's not, can people go to the temple and have an incredibly spiritual experience? Absolutely. I know people have. I know people have also claimed to do that, maybe because they were just afraid to say that they didn't. But
Right.
some people have a very spiritual experience, and I think that's great. I would simply ask, when you come out of the temple after having that spiritual experience, take a step back and examine these things that are a part of the bite model, and examine to see if you've allowed yourself to be separated from the people around you because of a feeling of superiority, because you believe that you have done all the things that you need to do for your salvation. Does it separate you and cause a superiority over other people? And if it doesn't, then great. That's terrific. But if it does, that's a moment for us to reflect and say, well, what's going on here? I know it did for me. And at the time, I would never have noticed it. I don't even know if I would have acknowledged it. But looking back now from a different lens, I totally see that. It was all about the temple. It was all about having those ordinances. And that caused a superiority and a separation from the people around me, except the ones who were doing the same thing I was doing.
Right. Well, and I'm going to say something, Mason. I agree with most of what you said, but there was a little thing in there where I was like, hey, I think your Mormon shadow is showing up there. But I wanted to answer Shannon's question. Number one, hey, Shannon, great to see you here. Thanks so much for joining us. Drinking is contracted to salvation in Mormon culture or religion. So I think you're asking, is drinking connected to your salvation? So in Mormonism, drinking alcohol is um, against the rules because of the word of wisdom. And so if you're drinking alcohol, then you're not worthy in God's eyes. That's one of the sins that will absolutely keep you out of the temple. Connected. Drinking is connected. Yes, drinking is connected to salvation. If you are drinking alcohol in the Mormon religion on a regular basis, or if you have that, addiction or alcoholism, then your eternal salvation and your ability to live with God is threatened. It doesn't matter if you're a social drinker or if it's, an occasional glass of wine. Like, the limits don't seem to really matter in Mormonism. It's kind of one of those black and white thinking. And it's actually pretty funny. A story, Mason, from us is that when I was like, hey, I want to try my first drink, like, Mason, I think you were kind of convinced that if I had just 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol, I was going to become a raging alcoholic and destroy our entire family. Like, your level of anxiety was, today, I'm going to say, quite endearing, and in the moment, infuriating.
So
What do you think?
I was not convinced you were going to become an alcoholic. I was afraid that you would. And
Okay.
I think that's what that is all about. Like if you're breeding these phobias, you're indoctrinating people with the phobia. If you have one drink, you're going to become an alcoholic. Maybe for some people that's true. I'm sure there's documented cases of that, but for the
Yeah.
most part, that's not the case. For the most
Yeah,
part, and
there is a genetic link through that. We see it show up,
sure,
but it's
sure,
not as
and
common as we used to think that it was. And I love this, Shannon. You said good choice of words, Mason. He's really good with his words.
I just think like I didn't think you were going to become an alcoholic. I didn't
Right.
think like I have an academic understanding of the fact that if you take a drink of alcohol, you've had a drink of alcohol. I know you. It's not like you're going to change in one moment because you've had alcohol. That's just not the case.
Right. But the fear
Because
was there.
the fear was there. The
And
fear was there.
right. And I kind of felt like you didn't really know what to do with the fact that the fear was there. I remember the first time I drank to a point where you or I would have noticed any psycho alterations in me was when I had burned my hand on the stove. And I was like, I won't take narcotics, but I'm going to try a shot of whiskey. And I was then able to tolerate the pain in my nerve endings, which, I mean, makes sense back in, the pioneer days, the rough and rugged United States, whatever. Rawr, we
Right.
drank whiskey as a pain medicine. And I mean, you have the story of Joseph Smith, like, oh, I can't drink that whiskey for my leg, and then glorifying it when I drank a shot of whiskey and I was a much nicer person because the whole palm of my hand, which I had just seared off, being stupid and careless in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right. Like
I
within reason, there's a time and a place. So
I
yeah.
I do anesthesia. Like how many people would not be able to get whatever's going on for them? How many people would not be able to get it fixed because they couldn't tolerate the procedure
Right.
without the drugs that I provide? Are they addictive? Some of them are. Are
Oh
they
yeah.
poison? Some of them are. Like they're a big deal and have cannot like they can be abused, and so we're careful with them, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have them in order to be comfortable during a procedure that is life-saving or certainly life preserving or quality of life preserving, all those things.
Right.
Again, it just comes down to the fear. If we can't have a healthy conversation about it,
Hmm.
then we just create fear. Like I know that's the case for me. Like I wasn't able to have a healthy conversation about alcohol. Why not? I had no idea what it was like. I didn't have any experience with it. Nobody in my family had ever been an alcoholic that I was aware of.
Right.
And so there was no healthy discussion to go on. It was just don't do it. God said don't, so don't. Like it's as simple as that. Like God laid down the law, we follow the law. And I just don't think that that's very healthy in a lot of situations, maybe most situations. I just don't think that that's very healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, Stephanie, thanks so much for the heart that you've given us. One of the greatest things that our audience can do is like and subscribe. It helps bump us up in the algorithms so that our show is able to reach more people. So please do that. And then, of course, I want to make sure yes, I am an LPC. Addiction is super complex, and that's not our topic today. But yeah, addiction is super complex. And when I started drinking, I actually did it on a cruise ship with one of my best friends. Or she shows up in my book as Finn. And I mean, I went there to be like, hey, I want to know what this feels like. I want to taste this. I want to figure out what I like, what I don't like, if I even like it, in a very safe environment. And so when you're approaching those things in a responsible way, that's a good thing. But Mason, I wanted to challenge something that you had said about, this mama ushering her little ducklings through the crowd of the cruise ship with the spirits not here, kind of like what you were saying. Let's instill fear about something that is very human and beautiful versus this religious dogma of, if I look in the wrong direction for too long, my children are going to be at risk for being contaminated by the world. And I think that when you said, Mason, something along those, so I heard you say, let me use my Gottman skills. What I heard you say was, you can have these conversations, take them into the room, and then have them judge in private. That's what I heard you say. That's not what you said, but you said, we can have those healthy conversations. We can talk to our kids, did you see this? We didn't like that. And I would say, from my perspective, as if you were a client and saying, hey, how do I teach my children the standards that we have, and this level of morality for our family, I would say, hey, kiddos, what did you think of that big party? Did you like the music? Was it loud? Did you like the dancing? What did you like? What didn't you like? And if my children identified something that made them uncomfortable, then I would talk about it. But I'm not going to walk my kids through a crowd and be like, oh, did you see that person who was? Because we don't want to do that. Because when we teach our kiddos that way, we're actually teaching them to judge. And you'd be surprised, most kids are pretty oblivious to the things that make their parents uncomfortable. And so one of the ways to protect your children from fear is, if they're in a situation that is not dangerous to them, you don't need to say, hey, you're 3 years old and we walked through that and that was bad, and you could have lost the spirit of God, and you just don't want to do that, because then your 3-year-old's like, I don't even know what it was, and now I'm gonna lose God, right? So
Right.
like, recognize the ages and stages that your kiddos are at. If one of your kiddos is to say something like, hey, mommy, that man was stumbling around and he fell down and it really scared me because he bonked his head, well, then that's a great time to have the conversation of, alcohol can be used for good things, and it can be overused and cause somebody to really struggle in their life. So when you're grown up and old enough, for me, for our family, we've chosen not to drink because we feel like that's a dangerous thing, but if you make a different decision, just remember, a little bit's okay, a lot can really change the way that you interact in life. But there's no reason to take your kids into the back bedroom and start checking all the boxes off of what the entire, passenger list, the roster, what is it called?
The manifest.
Thank you. The passenger manifest. We don't need to go through and make sure that our 3-year-old and our 6-year-old and our 10-year-old are aware of all of the evils of the passengers on the manifest. For one, you're taking away the joy of their vacation. Number two, you end up inadvertently creating an anxious response when most of our kids are just not aware of that. Like, if you ask Kate, so Katie joined me on a cruise a couple years ago, and if you ask her what she loved about the cruise, that girl spent the entire time getting crispy bacon, sunburn all along her back because she would not get out of the fucking swimming pool. And she had a glorious time doing it. And she told me I was boring because at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was like, I'm going to go take a nap so we can watch the nighttime shows tonight. She's like, you're boring. I'm staying in the pool. And I was like, great. Have at it, kid. That kiddo, so she would have been what? She'd have been about 12, 13, 14. The first time that she went on a cruise, I think she's about 14. The first time that she went on a cruise with me. And even at 14, she was not aware of the dangers on the ship. And, for me, it was, hey, don't just make sure you're always in the public areas. Make sure you stay with your buddy. She met a little friend there. And it was, make sure you stay with your buddy, and you're not allowed to go in anybody's room but ours. And so we set those healthy boundaries to keep her safe. And then I let her explore. And for her, it's a wonderful memory. And she's not even going to be aware of just how drunk some of the people were around her because she's oblivious. Does the religion teach God said not to drink? Mace, I'm going to hand that one over to you from Shannon. Does Mormonism say that God said not to drink? I don't know.
Well, let me read from you from the first section of the Doctrine and Covenants right here when it says, search these commandments, for they are true and faithful, and the prophecies and promises which are in them shall all be fulfilled. What I, the Lord, have spoken, I have spoken. I excuse not myself. And then right down at the bottom, whether by mine own voice or by the voice of my servants, it is the same. Does Mormonism teach that God said not to drink? In not so many words, the word of wisdom is supposedly coming from God. If you look at the beginning of the word of wisdom, it's spoken as if it's coming from Jesus.
Right.
And the standard there is to abstain from alcohol. And whether or not that's what was intended initially by Joseph Smith, it is absolutely what it is now. When you're talking about your Temple Recommend interview, it isn't, are you careful with things that are in the word of wisdom? It's, do you obey the word of wisdom by abstaining from these things, and alcohol is one of them. So maybe not so much in a black and white thing, but absolutely that's what's implied.
Well, and I think what's so interesting about that is let's point out the hypocrisy there. When the word of wisdom came about, it was a suggestion, it was a word of wisdom. It was said with the intent of, limit these things, but it didn't actually change anybody's behavior, including the prophet who claimed to have gotten it. Because if you are aware of the history of Joseph Smith, he ordered up a bottle of wine, a very expensive bottle of wine to his room at the Liberty Jail. Now, I didn't even know you could order your own alcohol in jail. Obviously, the world has changed. When I was working at the local sheriff's office here as the mental health person, we definitely were not allowing prisoners to order up alcohol. I think you were allowed to say, I'm gluten free, and they would bring you gluten free food. But as far as getting alcohol in jail, that was
Yeah.
not allowed. And yet, Joseph Smith was drinking with Hiram Smith, John Taylor, and Mace. What was the other guy's name that was in there with him?
Willard Richards.
Thank you, Willard Richards. I wanted to say Wilford Woodruff, and I was like, it's not Wilford. Willard Richards. I was close. It's the damn W's. Willard,
So-
Wilford, Westbrook. Confusion. Squirrel.
So one
Squirrel.
final comment on that. You're absolutely right. It's in verse 2 of the Word of Wisdom, which is section 89 of the Doctrine and Covenants, where it says, to be sent greeting not by commandment or constraint, but by revelation and the word of wisdom. Like it's right in the revelation that it's not a commandment, it's not constraint, but again, the bite model, right? You take things that are meant to be liberating, they're meant to help you be a better person, and then you make them a rule in order to control that person. So we offered you liberty, but actually what we're going to do is we're going to take that from you. But then
And
to
I
come
love
back,
this that Ellen says the rule changed to drink wine of your own making after the extermination order, so it was okay to drink it. Locals used the wine as a method of poisoning members as part of the extermination order. I'm not familiar with that second part, Ellen. I'm not saying it's not true. I just don't. I would love to see that. Please email me a link to that. I'd love to learn more about that. But yes, the rules changed quite substantially.
So let's take a quick commercial break. Unpacking Mormonism will be right back.
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
The mighty and resilient Merrimack River, carving through the communities of our great region. My name is Linda Lorden, proud president of Merrimack County Savings Bank. And like the river that serves as our namesake, we're a constant yet ever-changing presence. Because to us, it's bigger than banking. It's about powering communities and putting people first. It's about knowing where you came from and where you're going. That's Merrimack style. Visit us at themerrimack.com.
Over the years, and I think that's part of the confusion with a lot of the teachings of Mormonism is that you start out with something. So bringing us back to like this idea of what's the great and spacious building, from the time you're little kids. I mean, Mason, when did you start learning about the great and spacious building? Like when was the first time you think you heard it?
It could have been as early as 1.5 years old when I went to nursery, where they started talking about like the tree of life or whatever. Right? It could have been that early. It certainly was by the time I was 3 or 4 in primary. I'm absolutely certain we had lessons about the great and spacious building.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree with that. I think that's, when I would start and it was, oh my goodness, I don't want to be of the world. I've got to be in the world, but not of the world, meaning I'm going to live in the world, but I'm not going to participate in the worldly things, such as line dancing with old people with a little bit of alcohol in their systems on a rocking cruise ship, because we did cruise during hurricane season, not going to lie. And we took off out of Orlando. So the boat was very, very rocky in April. And so, we were having a great time. We were connecting. And this, when I was in my Mormon years, I would have judged as dangerous, evil. I would have been very uncomfortable. I would have thought that something was gonna, like there was some contagion in there, and that if I caught that, I would end up tarnished and tainted, and I would definitely need to repent of something, which would have just been a huge, like, I would have been anxious all the time while on vacation. So a time where I'm supposed to be relaxing and enjoying myself, with or without alcohol, with or without the other passengers on the boat, I would have been constantly afraid. And really, what my experience has been over my years in Mormonism is that the people who have judged me the most harshly, the people who have made fun of me, the people who claim that I'm stupid, the people who are actually fitting the description of that great and spacious building have an all-inclusive pass to this one.
Yeah, well, and to bring it back to this building here, I think really the problem is this creates the ultimate in black and white thinking. When you walk out of this temple, you believe that you know exactly what you need to know to go back to God, and that is painted in black and white. And so anything that would keep you out of that building, anything that would keep you from following the covenants or whatever that you make in the temple, that's all bad. It's not just impermissible. Like you could walk out of the temple and say, you know what? There's nothing wrong with alcohol, but it's not permitted for me. I'm choosing to stay away from it because of this. But ultimately what happens is judgment. Alcohol is bad because it's restricted. So if it's restricted for me to get into the temple, it's bad. And so there's this huge black and white differential, and it creates that separation, and it creates that immediate judgment. If ever you see somebody with alcohol, with a cigarette, that are chewing tobacco, that have tattoos, that have coffee, that have too many piercings. You can see their
shoulders, or
right. They have a nose piercing. They don't have shoulders. They have shorts that are too short.
They don't have shoulders. Did you just say they don't have shoulders?
Clothing.
As in they're like,
their clothing doesn't have shoulders.
You have no shoulders but arms. You're like a T-Rex.
Yes. Thank you for stalling my progress there for something like that.
Sorry.
They don't, but
you
anyway.
You can't be on a soapbox. Only I'm allowed to be on a soapbox.
I've just named several things that are easy and immediate judgments that if you've been through the temple, we all make them. And whether or not, like some people I know make those judgments and don't care about it.
Right. Can I call it something, Mason, and then let you finish?
Yeah.
I already interrupted you, so I guess that means yes. I'm sorry. I'm being bossy.
Like you need permission to interrupt me.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm going to call it benevolent judgment. I'm judging the fact that your shoulders or your midriff are showing in order to protect my own sanctity and that of my children, because I got to instill this fear in order to stop my children from showing their shoulders or their midriff, or from drinking, Satan's brew that comes from Starbucks, or all these other things. And then we also ignore all the other pieces, but yeah.
It's funny that you say that. We also ignore the other pieces. This last comment by Shannon here, what does the church say about them drinking? How do they excuse it? We don't talk about that stuff. Like the way that they explain it is by not explaining it. We don't talk about it. Like you don't get taught that Joseph Smith drank wine in the prison.
Oh, yes.
You have to find that out from other sources that are not quote unquote trustworthy sources, even though it's absolutely true. Like we explain it by not explaining it. We don't talk about that stuff.
Right. I think that if you went to a primary meeting, so in a Mormon meeting, primary is going to be your kiddos that are 3 years old to 11 years old. So, and what you're going to say, if you said, did Joseph Smith drink alcohol? I can almost guarantee you none of those kids are going to be like, yes, he did. The night he died, the day Joseph Smith got murdered, he had some yummy wine. And frankly, I'm like, dude, if you can get wine in jail, okay. I mean, you obviously are not in a very, strict jail. I mean, have a glass, kick your feet up, take the anxiety off for whatever's gonna happen to you tomorrow. Wonderful. If I guess, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't fly in the United States anymore. But my guess is that most of those children would not know. Most of the youth wouldn't know. And I mean, if I said that, Mason, even to your parents who have been members, or my parents, like I don't think even my parents would know that Joseph Smith drank and smoked cigars all the way, even after the revelation. And frankly, if God came to me and said, don't do this, it's so bad for your body and it's going to make it harder for you to have me in your life, I'd probably stop. I mean, I think that's
It's
kind of one of those like, wow experiences.
it's funny
Go
we
ahead.
like to it's funny we like to tell the story about how did the word of wisdom come about. Well, all the elders were in there and they were spitting their tobacco and smoking, and Emma said, I'm not cleaning up after this anymore. And my first thought now from this side of things is Joseph Smith never cared what Emma thought. I mean, Joseph Smith has lived his life like someone who didn't care what Emma thought. And
Joseph Smith lived his life not caring what anybody thought unless he could get money from them.
well, yeah, to some degree, and the ones that disagreed with him vehemently enough, and usually, and sometimes they didn't even have to do it vehemently, they got
He
the boot, right?
excommunicated,
They were
right?
out,
He's
right?
like, oh, you're evil, get out. Yeah.
Right. So Joseph Smith never lived the word of wisdom. And that, I mean, again, we're harping on the word of wisdom. This is not part of
Right.
the temple, aside
That's
from
really
the
funny.
fact that it's an admission requirement.
Right.
And so, and for me, and to kind of just lead it to that kind of closing up thing for you, is that it creates this black and white thing. The temple is a separator, not a unifier.
Right.
It's excluder rather than inclusion. And not that I mean you can't have a building where you require people to live a certain way in order to enter. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with
Right.
that.
I would actually say we need to protect that right as part of our religious freedoms in this
Sure.
country.
Sure, if they want to do that, that's fine.
Right. They
The
want to do that. That's
problem
fine.
is it's in the name of creating better quote unquote Christians, but I don't feel like that's what's actually happening when they come out of the temple, unless they just can open their minds to the fact that this is going on. They don't become better Christians because of the temple. The temple kind of sets you up to be less Christian rather than more Christian.
Right. Absolutely. Thanks, Mason. I would say that I would rather be, okay, I'm going to pull up my pictures again, back on this cruise ship, line dancing with those who are mildly tipsy on a tipsy boat, any day than back in this temple of the Mormon Church. For Sarah Westbrook, and I can only speak for Sarah, the temple never brought me happiness or peace. It always was uncomfortable for me, and I know that's not the case for everybody. I would say that if you as an individual can attend any temple or any building and feel closer to your higher power, feel like you are connecting, gaining spiritual insight or spiritual growth, then by all means, please go. Sarah's happy place is going to be right here. On her way to paradise, I absolutely love exploring the world, and my happy place is actually participating in cultures across the world, learning about different climates and different people and how they view the world and anthropological history. I absolutely love it. I think my favorite thing from this cruise was being kid free with my dear sweet friend Stephanie. I'll show her here again. We had an absolute blast. Leaving our children with our husbands. Both of our husbands took leave from work so that she and I could go out and have a kid-free weekend and connect and relax and recuperate. We put water in our very empty wells so that our children can live a long and healthy life, because both of us were on the verge of spending a day at Liberty Jail ordering wine before getting murdered. For strangling our cute little babies.
Or committing murder, yeah.
I don't remember committing murder. No, yes, we're all in jest here, but this was our, self-care mommy break, and so shout out to our husbands who made that possible. And please, I would encourage our listeners, one of the best things that you can do for your mental health is self-care. I will tell you right now that I'm a hypocrite in this, that I will get completely burned out and at the point of, oh my goodness, Mason, I cannot handle anything else before I will rest into self-care. So do as I say, not as I do. This is the Berenstain Bears book about the daddy bear teaching brother bear how to ride the bike. And that is, please take care of your mental health. If you need somebody to talk to, you can always reach us. I will have those banners here. Go scroll across the bottom of the screen. And of course, as always, if you are in crisis or you feel like you just really need somebody to talk to, you can reach out to us, or you can call or text the mental health crisis hotline at 988. These are great resources. Please, by all means, use them. So Mason, I'm going to go ahead and let you completely close us out, say your thought, and then say our goodbyes as I run the board in the back. And thank you so much to our listeners. We forgot, Mason, before you go, we completely forgot to do the temple ceiling episode. That is probably because I was in that horrific car accident and it just threw me off and I lost track of where I was at. So we will go ahead, and today's our wrap up, and then we'll give you, the bonus episode, and then I'll have Alex get those timelines corrected when we release these as a podcast, so that you can hear the stories that we have to share about being sealed in the temple and my wedding day. So, all right, Mason, go ahead, take us away.
All right, just two quick things here. First, I don't think it's fair to call someone hypocritical because they don't do something well. Like, just because you know that mental health is, or that taking a break or filling your own well, mental health, preserving your own mental health is important, doesn't mean that life circumstances make it easy. And so I would caution you from anyone from calling yourself a hypocrite because you're not able to do exactly what you know is best for you. And then secondly, thank you guys so much for all of you that have been here, made comments. If I'm understanding correctly, Alex said that these have been the quickest episodes to at least 100 views. And I love that. Thank you for supporting us. And I hope that the information has been helpful. I hope that it is especially helpful to your own mental health, to be able to categorize the idea of the temple appropriately for where you are. It can be very valuable for some people, the temple can. And for other people, it's important to recognize the temple can be very, very damaging. And I think that being able to see it both ways is what really is important. I can enjoy the temple while still recognizing that this is not the right place for everybody. And I can sit outside Mormonism and say that is definitely not the right place for me anymore. But I can understand that it is still the right place for someone else, and that's okay.
So Mason,
thank
real
you guys
quick,
for being here.
hang on real quick. Alex wanted me to let y'all know it was the fastest to reach 100 listens, but those numbers are still climbing much more rapidly than any other series that we've done before, and we couldn't have done that
thanks for the
without our
clarification.
listeners. Also,
That's
just
awesome.
a reminder, we often throw out prizes during these shows. We did not today. And for those of you that won your prize at our last show, I will get those shipped out. Literally, we had a horrible snowstorm, and I totaled my Highlander, and our life got paused there for a minute. So we are back at it, and we've got a lot of extra time this week because Mason's on vacation. So woohoo, go Mason. So we'll get those prizes out, and we will get you that last episode. All right, Mace, back to you.
Oh, that's it. I'm done. Love you guys. Thanks for supporting us, and thanks for being here with us.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Alex.